What's up, guys? You are listening to the Lifestyle Hub, the podcast that takes you behind the scenes and into the lives of inspirational people, not only educating you, but unlocking your true potential to live a healthy, more active, and fulfilling life. My name is Jason Grima. Welcome to today's episode. Now let's get this show on the road. Before we get started, I'd like to take a moment to thank our sponsor, the leading home and commercial gym specialist in the Middle East, Ghana Fitness Supplies. Check them out at www.ghana.ae for all your fitness needs. All right, guys, welcome to episode 7. I'm going to say this is a good episode because 7 happens to be my favorite number, and we are already 7 episodes into the Lifestyle Hub. Again, thanks for all the love. Last week, we had a very inspirational guest on, Mr. Ibrahim Ibu Bar, ex-professional footballer, who is out now working through, he's doing some scouting work here in Dubai for AC Milan. He's managing a team over here in the UAE. So that's a very interesting episode. Please take a time to have a listen. But today we are discussing something that I think a lot of us can relate to. And today's topic is stop using travel as an excuse to pile on the pounds and throw routine out the window. This is a topic that I think all of us can relate to. It's definitely an area that we've all, I guess, made positive and negative decisions when it comes to traveling and trying to stay in healthy shape, stay healthy and fit. So I wanted to break it down. This week, for those who have been following me, I was away. I spent 7 days over in the UK visiting Vic's family. We had a wedding to attend, which was absolutely amazing. You guys would have seen a bit of the highlights from the stories. It was cold. I did survive, though, considering I'm from two of the probably hottest cities on the planet, being Brisbane and Dubai. But we made it. And it was a great trip. But I've landed back in Dubai feeling like I really haven't missed much, in the sense that, I mean, besides being a little bit tired and fatigued, physically, from a physical standpoint, my weight, I know weight's not everything, but my weight actually hadn't gone up considering I was away having drinks and food over the course of the last 7 days. My body's still feeling strong. I don't feel like I've dropped off the bandwagon, and I'm not facing that difficulty that a lot of people face when they're coming back into the training routine after being away from the gym. And I'm going to kind of detail why that's the case and how I've managed to keep on track. And, you know, I'm going to kind of, obviously I understand that I'm a trainer and that this is something that I do for a living, and it's a lot easier for me, but I'm going to actually kind of drop down a few rungs and paint the picture for just, you know, you guys, people who might not live and breathe health and wellness, and break it down for you a little bit more on how you can also benefit and optimize your travel time to also keep yourself in shape and keep that consistency going. So we're going to dive right into today's topic, which is, as I mentioned, traveling and training and staying in shape while you're away. The first step that I think that a lot of people overlook is actually thinking ahead when they're traveling and pre-planning locations that offer good support as far as gyms and wellness access is concerned. So what I mean by this is when you're picking a location, I mean, what we've got to keep in mind is there's 2 types of travel, okay? You've got work travel, and then you've got, you know, holidays, your vacations, family trips, adventurous locations, and you're trying to see the world, etc. So there's 2 different types, and I'm going to address both. But I would say in both scenarios, it does help to kind of pre-plan ahead and see, you know, are you going to be spending a majority of this trip being active, i.e. walking, hiking, being outdoors, doing any sort of activities that incorporate movement? Or is it relatively sedentary? Are you drinking? Are you partying? Are you going out every night, etc.? Then you need to kind of assess how long is this trip for. If it's only a few days, then it's something that you could probably say, look, I'm going to train right up until the trip. I'm going to then go away, enjoy myself. It's only a 2-day trip. I'm going to Barcelona. We're going to have a great time. We're going to try everything that everybody hands me on the corner of every street. And I'm going to have a good time. And I probably won't wake up feeling very flash in the morning, but that's all part of the fun. If that's the case, then I would say in those kind of trips, you go and enjoy yourself, but you just understand that when you come back, you get straight back into the training regime. But for a lot of us, sometimes those trips are a lot longer. And what a lot of people battle is trying to offset calories. as well as to keep their headspace in a positive, in a positive place. So I think we're going to kind of break those down now. So the two things to remember, guys, is you're pre-planning your locations and you're pre-planning your workout intentions. Okay, so once you figured out your intentions of the trip, I'm going to use like a basic example. Let's say I'm going to use my example, 7-day trip to visit family and friends over in another country with one main event being a wedding. But other than that, I've got no real plans other than visiting people, which will probably, come with multiple occasions of food and drink, etc. So based on that scenario, I actually pre-booked a location that had gym access. And the gym was actually quite nice. It had a gym access. It had a swimming pool indoors, heated. It had a sauna. It had a steam room. The gym access was included in the night stay there. So from that perspective, I was like, great. So I can go in, get up a little bit earlier, or, even by my standards, had a sleep in, went down to the gym, still trained, got up, had a nice breakfast and a coffee with Vic, and then we kicked off and started the day. And I was able to do that, I would say 6 out of the 7 days. One of the days I didn't have access to a gym because we actually went for a day trip to Wales for the wedding, but I decided to go for a run outside, which is also a great way to see the sights. So once you've kind of set, your intentions of the trip, then you can make sure that your location has the convenient, equipment. Sometimes you're not going to locations that have all this kind of stuff. So you've got to just kind of pick and choose. You need to be okay when you're traveling with your program or your exercise type not being 100%. A lot of the people will have like a program and they'll be so set on making sure that that exact program is the only thing that they can possibly do. It's not going to go the way you'd planned. You're never going to go to a gym facility that has all the same machines that you're used to or same bits of equipment. So you need to improvise. In my case, on the Sunday morning, I drove 20 minutes to go to a local gym. Basically, I couldn't go in unless I was a member. So I ended up driving all the way back, which is another 20 minutes. And I was like, look, I could just throw the towel in now, but I know that training kind of sets my mind. Again, for those who know me, I don't train necessarily because I'm like a meathead in the gym and all I think about is health and fitness. You guys, I share my lifestyle with you. It's fairly well balanced. Exercise is like the main driver for my mind being in the most positive position possible to help and support other people be in their most best and positive mindsets. That's literally what I do every day. I have a team of 50 people and it's up to me to try and get them out of bed in the morning. So if my headspace is all over the shop, aside from obviously looking the part, which, I do take a lot of pride in doing, there's a lot of examples, guys. You've seen a lot of people who look in shape, but their attitudes suck, or they're potentially in a negative space, or they're not proactive, they're not able to motivate you, you're not inspired by them. And I'd like to think that, if you guys are listening, I'm offering some form of inspiration at some point, along the line that you've known me. But that all comes down to me getting my headspace in the right position. And that comes from exercise. There's no magic trick. I mean, maybe a coffee helps as well every now and then. But more or less, it's exercise. So for me, it was like, look, I don't want to throw the towel in. I've got a wedding on today. I want to feel good. I want to sweat a little bit. So I went for a 30-minute lap around the streets of a little town called Llangollen in Wales. Ran past plenty of sheep, got my feet dirty, muddy. It was raining. It was nice. It was cold. Something different. It was a bit uncomfortable, sure. But I felt great afterwards and I was able to carry on with my day in the best possible headspace. So that's one of the benefits of exercising, but you've just got to be okay with there being variables. I always like to suggest setting time frames. For me, it's always earlier in the day. I don't think it's very likely in most cases that you're going to really get into a gym or get in any sort of exercise in later in the day as you start to eat, visit people, visit the sites, etc. So for me, it's always earlier in the day if you want to set yourself up for success. And then I think the best way to look at exercise when you're away is not necessarily focus on hitting personal bests, lifting your heaviest weights in the gym, but focusing on somewhat maximum calories, sweating so that you feel good, release those endorphins and just get your steps or movement. So your body doesn't stiffen up and you don't feel tight from all the travel, flush out all the toxins and the fluids. If you're drinking, if you're flying, et cetera, it does help to just kind of sweat, keep your body moving and then rehydrate yourself. So that's kind of in a summary, how I look at travel and exercise, but we're going to break it down into more detail. Okay, I'm going to kind of go through the other scenario now, which a lot of people face, which is work travel. Okay, so that's where you work for a company and there's multiple points throughout the year that you have work travel. It might be weekly, monthly, you name it. But there is regular travel that you know about in advance, or maybe you don't. But it is like a regular thing. You're being whisked away to different locations. Now, more or less, most of the time, these locations are somewhat similar. If you're going to the same locations weekly, monthly, etc., you'll probably go to the same location twice. And that's where I would start to, if your company doesn't provide you with a gym or hotel that has a gym inside, I mean, we're adults. You can find a gym down the road, give them a call, find what it costs to do a daily visit or a weekly subscription and join up there for the week. A lot of people always say to me, I don't have anything in my hotel room. I'm like, well, look, I mean, let's be honest. You can just literally Google gyms in my area and find something down the road. You can also train in your room. So that's an option as well. If there's no gyms in your location, maybe it's not a safe location, you can do a little workout in your room that's going to also set you up for feeling great. Or sometimes maybe even just a walk or a run. What I'm getting at here is there's actually no reason for you not to have some form of exercise, even if you are traveling, despite the location and what you have available. What you need to understand that if you're like frequently traveling, guys, these are going to be frequent upsets that are going to occur to your health and wellness goals. So if you're traveling regularly and you're not really achieving your health and wellness goals, I would say that probably is a large contributing factor as to why you aren't succeeding in that goal in particular. It's good to know sometimes when you're traveling, you're a little bit more solo. Maybe you have a little bit more time to actually plan your day. Maybe you don't. Some people rock up and they have the most crazy schedules. Ultimately, you still will have a choice at some point in the day to allocate anywhere from 20 minutes to 60 minutes of exercise. Because again, that's something I always hear. It's like, it's a really late meeting and a really late early start, et cetera, but there is always time to do something. And if that's just a walk, if that's just having a little bit of a lunch break, going for a stroll around the city, you can find ways to be active. I don't think it's an excuse to get off track. It's not really one that I accept when anybody's going through a body transformation with me. If you are serious about seeing results, seeing a serious outcome, you will find time to train in any form or capacity. If you don't have time to train, then we would look at things like offsetting your calorie intake. So for me, when someone's like, there's no time to train because I'm working from dusk till dawn, or dawn till dusk, I should say, unless you're working the nights, which does happen depending your field. And then I'm like, look, you can just offset your calories, eat a little bit less, but like, oh no, I've got client dinners, client lunches, client this, client that. I'm like, well, bottom line is you don't really have much self-respect for yourself or for what you're trying to achieve. It's really not a priority for you. And at the end of the day, you're just making excuses because that's the reality of it. Unless it's like a small trip, a day trip or two, and you're going to treat yourself, which is different. If you're on that work trip and you simply can't find not one positive contributing factor to help keep yourself on track, then you just simply don't want it bad enough. And quite frankly, you don't deserve it. So that's a harsh reality out of the way there. Okay. So there's no real room for that. I'm trying to kind of eliminate the excuses a little bit today so you can kind of hear it from my perspective as somebody that obviously wants to see you get the best out of what you put your mind to, which in this case, a lot of you that are listening have experienced or are trying to go through the motions of developing your health and wellness routines, getting healthier, more fit, more active, changing the shape of your body, etc. So this is totally relevant for you. So if we go back to like your special travel, so we've got the work travel. I've almost eliminated all the excuses there. There's really no reason not to get into the gym despite, that frequent traveling work routine. What I like to do for some people is go, okay, cool. You've got a program for why you're in town, i.e. you're in Dubai, you're with me, you're running through your training program in the gym. Then I have an offset program for you when you travel. That might be based around a hotel gym that you have access to. I might even give you, if your trainer's switched on, they're going to give you a few different options. So they'll say, cool, you've got your strength and conditioning program when you're with me here in Dubai. When you travel, you've got a program that you can use at a basic commercial gym. You've got a body weight program that you can use in your hotel room. And you've got a recommended either run or walk or stretch routine or some form of body weight routine that can also be followed. So I'm setting you up for the best possible success. Bands, resistance bands, you can do heaps of movements, bicep curls, shoulder press, chest press, banded row, squats, lunges, you name it. That's just using a few different resistance bands. They're super light and easy to put into your suitcase. So From that perspective, your trainer can help you set up so that you have something to do. Okay, I wouldn't expect you guys to know what to do. I mean, a lot of you are with trainers, a lot of you are working with me, etc. This is a good opportunity for you to maximize, my knowledge or the knowledge that's out there, and optimize your time and give yourself, some fallback options so that you really are not allowing that those excuses to creep on in. All right, guys. So basically, we've covered your work travel. We've covered I'd say I briefly covered with you like your 7-day, trip away. That's not really I guess you do have flexibility options. On my trip that I've been away for, there was options. So, I could choose to go to a gym. I had time in the day. Vic's obviously quite supportive of us both hitting the gym before we start our days, etc. So that's one option. Then you've got the work option, but then there's the big family event, the special trip away, the once in a lifetime holiday that you've saved and worked all year for, etc. You've got kids, you're a parent. It's a lot more complicated than the trip that I just had, where I was really just worrying about myself more or less. So you've got a lot more responsibilities. Now, what's the answer for you when you travel? Well, let's put things into perspective. You have a lot less time that you can control because you're obviously trying to take care of other people. You've got a lot more things that you need to take into account. Maybe you're moving between city to city. You've got locations. You're being careful, making sure people are safe, etc. There's more responsibility. Maybe you have more events and functions that's requiring more time at certain points of your day. What do I think in that case? Look, if the trip is like a short trip, that's what I was kind of touching on at the very, very start. If your trip's a short trip, and I would say that would include something from 3 to 7 days, even 10 days. If you didn't train in this time, if you did no intentional exercise in this time, you will not undo months of hard work. Okay, if you've trained for 3 months prior to this trip, you've been going through the motions, you've been working on your health and fitness, you've been training, you've been building those habits, you've been building muscle in the gym, you will not lose all of that progress. Okay, so relax, you're going to be okay. All that will happen is you will feel a little bit dusty when you come back. And that's where I've been in that case before where I've been in Lebanon. I think I was there for 2 months. I had no gyms. I tried training at home. It was freezing cold. It wasn't like what I'd expect. And I knew that when I got back to get back into my strength training regime, that I was going to feel weak. I was going to be a little bit dusty. But that's where you need to also put your hand up and say, look, I'm going back. I know I'm not going to feel my best, and I'm okay with that. But I'm still going to go through the motions. None of this bullshit where you've just got back and you're like, I'll start next week. And then all of a sudden, 1 week becomes 2, it becomes 3 months, it becomes 6 months. And that all because of that 10-day trip, you've now undone 3 months of hard work. So you just need to go set that expectation, because that's a big one. And that's something I talk about a lot. And health and wellness is all about setting reasonable expectations so that you can plan. You can obviously manage your hopes. And where you drive your motivation levels, because that's something people always think. They think their motivation is always going to stay high. We all know that it doesn't, and it has dips, pretty aggressive dips in today's society. But if you can come back and say, sweet, that first 2 weeks is going to suck. I'm going to feel like I'm starting back to ground one a little bit. You won't be. You'll just be starting a few dumbbells less or a few plates less than you did before. After that 2 weeks, I guarantee you felt like you never left. So that's the consolation for you guys who are going on these trips where you just don't have the time to train. Generally, I think a lot of people, whenever we're traveling, we're probably getting a lot of steps done anyway. So if you're traveling around Europe or any countries like this, you're taking your kids to parks and adventure parks and theme parks, etc. You are going to be racking up a large amount of steps. And if you try, I'm going to talk about this soon, but nutrition can play a big part on these kind of holidays where you can be smart and strategic so that you don't undo all your hard work. So if you don't have time to do those little workouts, etc., bite it on the chin. We'll talk about the nutrition choices that you can make in a moment, but then you come back, get straight back into the gym, and then, get yourself back on track. Okay. So they're like your 3 main variables. So again, I'm just going to reiterate those. You've got the travel that you can control. Maybe it's social, family-based, etc., but you've got more control. You've got less responsibility. You've got the middle tier, which is your work-related trips, more frequent, maybe more time demanding, and it's just kind of part of the job that you do. And then you've got your big family occasion special trips that are chaotic. Okay, so I've kind of tried to give you some options or some solutions to each of those categories, but let's kind of like break it down a bit more. Why am I going on about exercise when traveling? Like at the end of the day, I could just say, don't worry about it, forget it. You don't need to exercise when you travel, just pick it up when you get back. Well, look, the biggest thing for me, and this is because I'm a huge believer in this benefit, is endorphins. Society is pretty tough, okay? Like, the stresses of our jobs, the stresses of finances, the stresses of our environment, the situations that, around the world are constantly changing that are affecting us on like personal levels, career-based levels, etc. Dealing with friendships, dealing with, responsibilities in the house, dealing with your kids, all those kind of things that come into play. The best and most natural way that you can positively impact all of those areas is by moving your body, releasing your feel-good endorphins, which generally are triggered when you exercise and you sweat. And there'd be a minimum time frame around that. I should actually know what that is. But I mean, imagine anything more than 15 minutes is probably going to help trigger those feel-good endorphins and have you feeling $1 million. So that's my first thing. Like if you're going through a health and fitness regime, you want to try and keep those endorphins free flowing. You want to try and make sure that feeling stays as natural to you as possible. I'm at a point now after training for, I'd say 15 years, 16 years solid, that I am absolutely hooked to that endorphin release because it makes me feel great. I feel like I can be the person I'm meant to be when I've trained or exercised. People look at me as going, oh, you're just obsessed with running on the treadmill or you're just obsessed with lifting weights. That's not really what gets me to the gym floor. I don't really care. And I've seen my bicep looking jacked in the mirror about 1,000 times. That doesn't really get me going either. At a point, that physical component wears off. If you take it that level deeper and you start to understand how strong the benefit of that endorphin release is and how good it makes your mind feel, then that's when you'll get hooked. And I think a lot of my clients, I really know that I've done my job is when they get to the point when they say to me, hey, look, I've missed a few days. I don't feel good. I need to get back into the gym. Like I love that because I'm like, great, you know that feeling. You know what, like we're here for the same purpose, is to get that feeling of feeling good so that you can go home, switch off from the gym. That's it. You're not living and breathing the weights floor or the gym floor, etc. But then you're able to positively impact, your family situation, positively impact your kids, do your job really well, be a positive environment, at home and at the workplace. So there's so many benefits from that perspective. The second one is routine. Keeping that routine. So if you've been consistent, you train 3 days a week every day, it does feel a little bit tricky to drop that routine. So if you can try and allocate travel while you're exercise while you're traveling, then it's going to help with keeping that routine nice and steady. Obviously, from a results perspective, if a lot of people will be mid body transformation with me and then they'll actually have to go away on a trip. Is it a reason to kind of throw all that hard work out the window? No, I'd say in that case, that's where you would actually buckle down a little bit more. Try to have some sort of strategies around, your trip with your trainer. It's something that I definitely always make sure clients, have a plan before they go. And we make sure that your results keep moving on the right track. Next one would probably be purpose. Making sure that you have, some sort of purpose. A lot of the time people don't feel like they can start their day until they exercise. So if you're one of those people, there's definitely a benefit. Get up, see the sights, feel good, and then off you go. Confidence is another big one. Making sure that you can start the day feeling confident. Maybe you're going to meet the in-laws. Maybe you're going to see family. You're going to an event. Do what makes you feel confident. And for a lot of people after a gym session, you generally feel better about yourself. You feel like you look better in the clothes that you're in. So just getting that small 15-minute, 20-minute, 30-minute session can make all the difference. But the main one when it comes to why exercise when you travel is to offset calories. Because when we travel, I don't know anybody who doesn't travel and not love to eat as much as they can when it comes to like experiencing new cultures. Maybe you're going home to your family. You're going to see your family back home in the country that you were born in or your family live in. Some cultural foods that you don't often eat, mum's cooking, etc. Everybody travels to eat. You go to a cold climate, you want hot food. You go to a hot climate, you want beachy food and drinks, etc. It's just part of travel. So the best way that you can sometimes offset the intake of calories is by increasing your output of calories. And that's where doing a run or doing some cardio, doing some weights can make a really big and positive difference. Cool. So that's why do you exercise when you travel? How to train when traveling, guys. Like, this depends. I would say, I've kind of touched on these. So you've got your gym-based training. You've got the variety where you're using body weights or bands, or you're running, which is like a hybrid to sightseeing. I always love running. That's the reason, like one of the main reasons why, even though I'm trying to get like bigger in the gym and stronger, etc., I never want to let go of the fact that I can just bang out a 5-kilometer run quite comfortably, because for me, I can actually see the sights. Like the other day, I ran 5Ks in Wales. I ran probably some paths that I wouldn't have driven. I ran actually on some roads that cars couldn't go, and I was running right along this little fjord. It was amazing. I saw squirrels and shit. So for me, like, that's a cool experience. You're like diving right into that location. So sometimes you get a bit of a different view, and that could even be walking. If you can't run, go for a walk. 30 minutes, it's a great way to see the sights and to really get a feel of the area that you're in. So that's kind of the training types when you are traveling. Now, this is a big one, because as we kind of start to get towards the end of today's episode, food is a really important component, okay? You can make or break a trip with obviously how well you control your foods. Again, put things into perspective. If it's a small once-in-a-lifetime trip, fine. Go all in. Go hard. You've earned it. Train hard up until that point. Go on a 3-day bender. Eat whatever you want. Don't think twice. And then when you come back, just expect you're going to feel a little bit shit. And then it's going to take you 7 days to dust off the cobwebs, and then you're back into your routine. Happy days. The other alternative to that is the option that I suggest to my clients is try to offset your calorie intake for the day. So I like to suggest having like a lighter breakfast, a lighter lunch, and then, I mean, depending on the location, you're having most of your calories in the evening. If for you it's a big family breakfast, have a big family breakfast, have a light lunch, and have a lighter dinner. And that can change from day to day, but kind of have a bit of a think day in advance and be like, all right, tomorrow we've got the wedding at lunch, which is going to be a big night as well. So I'm going to fast in the morning. I'm just going to get up, have a coffee, go for a walk. And then once I hit the wedding for lunch, I'm going to have copious amounts of drinks. I'm going to eat a lot of food. I'm going to have a good night's sleep. And then tomorrow I'll have a light breakfast as well. So you're kind of trying to find a way to offset your calories, opposed to big lunch, big breakfast, big dinner. And then boom, your calories are racked up for the day, 4,000 or 5,000 calories, which is very easy to do, sadly. My go-to foods when I'm traveling, guys, I like to obviously take snacks with me, like protein bars. I like to buy protein bars when I'm out. We had a lot of coffees when we were in the UK because it was cold, but I feel like coffee being a natural appetite suppressant, tea can work in your favor as well. It feels like you've got something there with you. You're not less likely to snack all the time. Try to have foods that are higher in protein and like good quality, like food density. They're going to fill you up longer. So have quality meals rather than eating too much like junk food and snacks where you'll keep eating and eating and eating and not really feel satisfied. So they're kind of my go-tos when it comes to travel. I definitely don't eat plain food. Like both trips, I'm just trying to think. Yeah, both trips we flew at night. We had the dinner option. I think we had a breakfast option. And I think both Vic and I just said, no, thank you. Like we're good. I don't really rate plain food. I think if you want to get the most of your flight ticket and you feel like you need to smash the plain food, you can. It's just full of sodium because obviously they want to make sure that there's some form of levels of preservatives, that it's tasty for most people's palates, etc. Sometimes the choices are not necessarily they're getting better with allergens, etc., but they're not always user friendly. And I feel like I just get off a plane feeling heavy. You already kind of naturally hold water. You don't really sleep very well. Then smashing in like a plain meal I end up getting off the plane just feeling like absolute shit. So I like to get off a flight feeling quite tight in my midsection, hydrated, and then I'm more encouraged to actually get into the gym. Then I'll go and eat something tasty on ground. That's kind of the approach that I would rather. The thing to remember too, guys, is like when you're traveling, when it comes to nutrition and bloating, etc., or like foods that don't really sit well with you, you're often going to eat foods that you don't normally eat. Big thing to try to remember, guys, is to avoid foods that will bloat you on trips. Now, I think it's always important for us to get in tune with what foods sit well with you or what agrees with you and what doesn't. People have, again, I've spoken about this in the Fad Diets episode, but people have different views on like intolerances and allergen tests, etc., etc. Whatever your stance points on that is, I know that certain foods I eat make my stomach uncomfortable. They make me drowsy. They make my stomach instantly bloated and I feel sick. So for me, I try to avoid those foods. And quite often or not, on a trip when you're traveling, you'll be eating foods that you don't normally eat. Just kind of try to either, one, avoid them. If you're like, no, you know what? I've worked hard for this. I'm going to eat anything that I want. I don't care about how it's going to make me feel right now. That's fine. But also understand that when you get back, that bloating will pass once you clean your diet back up. So again, you're going to feel a little worse than maybe you didn't eat that bad, but you ate a lot of foods that just didn't agree with you. Just be patient with getting back and saying, look, give me a couple of days to get the water from the flight out of the system, the bloating from the foods that didn't sit well out the system, and then I'm going to feel like I'm back on track and moving in the right direction. It's just that consistency factor. So guys, just to summarize, I hope you had a few good points from today's episode. I think, we covered a lot of different, angles on this one. It was, fairly go from the start. Why go to all this effort when you're traveling? That's what people think. Like a lot of people are like, why are you bothering with all of this? For me, I think it comes down to consistency. So consistency is key. If you want to incorporate health and wellness into your lifestyle long term, you've got to accept that you're always going to travel. You're always going to have circumstances that don't work out to your regular schedule. The more versatile you can be and the more flexible you can be to change or to unforeseen circumstances, the more efficient you're going to be at adapting and to maximizing, getting benefits in every sort of environment that are going to ultimately help you work towards your goal, maintain your goal, et cetera, et cetera. So for me, it's like consistency and being ready to adapt to any situation, regardless of travel, regardless of a late day at work, regardless of, maybe they're not feeling too great, et cetera. You find that way, and the better you can kind of figure out where you want to go, the better it's going to be. You got to think about what makes you happy long term. Is that short term meal that you're going to just kind of stuff yourself now? You're going to wake up and you're not going to train for 7 days straight. You can't be bothered, blah, blah, blah. Is that going to make you happy long term when you get back home in 2 weeks from now and you feel like absolute crap and you're struggling to kickstart that routine? And the biggest thing for me and a lot of people is obviously being a role model to those around you. If you're traveling with your kids, it's always nice to set the example. I'll never forget my uncle, Chola William. He used to come and visit. My mum's brother used to come and visit us in Australia, in Brisbane. He was in Sydney. So every time I remember as a kid that he would get up every morning and go for a run around. We had an acreage at the time, so he'd go for a big run around the block. And for me as a kid, I was always like, I saw him as like a healthy, fit, and active person because he just got up every day and went for a run. So your kids are watching. They're watching what you do. So if you're getting up and going for a gym session and then you're coming in, they'll see the vibes, they'll feel the energy. It's a really powerful, way to set the example for your kids and obviously set yourself up for a really good day. And look, at the end of the day, to summarize, life is as good as you make it, guys. The biggest thing to remember is that, people just work themselves into the ground, especially in a city like Dubai. Yes, you've got work travel. Yes, you've got late nights, all that kind of stuff. Mate, it doesn't matter at all when you end up in a box in the ground, because that's where everybody ends up at some point. And ultimately, you want to maximize your ability to live the longest, most fulfilling life possible. And that's one of the most that's like the base of why I've designed this podcast, is to try to inspire you guys to live the most happy and fulfilling life, using health and wellness as a tool to unlock your true potential. So just keep that in mind next time you go on a trip. Is this trip going to work towards my goal of living a longer, healthy and happy, more fulfilling life? Or am I just working for somebody else, working myself into the ground, elevating my stress levels, days away from a heart attack, et cetera, et cetera. I know it's a bit of a gloomy way to end this episode, but I want to kind of give that little bit of a reality check. At the end of the day, I think a lot of things need to be focused around longevity, and that's only going to be as proactive or as focused or as prioritized as you make it. Only you as an individual. No matter what I say or what I tell you to do is really going to change your mind. It comes down to you. I can only inspire and influence you positively. So guys, I hope you enjoyed today's episode. That was episode 7. Next week, we'll be back in the Lifestyle Hub HQ for our episode 8, and I will give you more information on who that guest is throughout the week. So stay tuned on all of the social channels. Lastly, of course, I do ask a quick favor before we go. If you're enjoying the podcast, please let me know. If you have a minute to spare, I'd love to read your reviews. This lets me know what listeners like or dislike about the show, so I can make sure to give you content you all love to hear. Please subscribe to the podcast in the app that you're listening to. You can receive new episodes right away when they're released. But before we go, one last shout out to our sponsors at Ghana Fitness, the leading home commercial gym specialist in the Middle East. Be sure to check them out at www.ghana.ae for all your fitness needs. And that's a wrap. Thanks so much for joining me, Jason Grimmer, on the Lifestyle Hub podcast. Until next time, I'll catch you later.